topics for 2024, we decided to take a little bit deeper dive into the area of environmental resources in Licking County. With that being said, though, today, those of you who have blue on, thank you, because we're also highlighting today is National Child Abuse Awareness Day. And so we stand with all of our partners in Licking County who work to address child abuse across Licking County. So we remember the victims, the families, and again, those who are working in that area as well today. We certainly want to thank our sponsors, our gold sponsors today as well, Licking Memorial Health System, Denison University, as well as Owens Corning for supporting this event, and for Snapshots for providing our food each month. On your table, you have some green slips of paper. We do invite you throughout the morning to write down any questions that you might have, and we'll have an opportunity for the audience to ask questions of our panelists at the end, as well as if you have any suggestions for future topics that we might consider or future experts in the field that you'd like to see us take a deeper dive on, feel free to write those down on the pieces of paper on your table as well. If you haven't been here before, just some housekeeping. Restrooms are located as you came in through LCAP's main doors, right by the coffee pots. The restrooms are located, and feel free. We are recording today's Community Partner Council forum as we do each month. We make these available on our website. United Way encourages everybody to improve our community through giving, advocating, and volunteering. And one of the ways that we support advocacy is by educational forums and inviting people to come together to have open dialogues with one another and to learn about the issues that affect all of us. So with that being said, your faces might be on our video recording. So if you don't want to be in the view of the owl, you might want to move over to the other side. But again, we thank you for your participation today. We have a number of pre-written questions that we've provided our panelists this morning. And we usually try to get through them. Sometimes we don't. Because we also are responsive to the discussions that happen up here this morning. Let me say just a few words about our presenters, our panelists. First of all, Jennifer Roberts, and you can read this in the bios that you have, so I won't read the whole bio, but Jennifer is the Executive Director for the Newark Campus Development Fund, the Thomas J. Evans Foundation, and the Gilbert Reese Family Foundation. So we welcome Jennifer. Thank you so much. Scott Morris, REHS, is the Director of Outdoor Environmental Health at the Licking County Health Department. Thank you, Scott, for being here. Andrea Krava is the Director and Educator of Licking County Recycling, and we're glad you're here with us. And Deirdre Wise is the Conservation Educator at the Licking County Soil and Water Conservation District. So Deirdre, thank you also for being here this morning. If you want to read more about them, you can read those in the Bible, and you can also go to their websites of the locations where they work. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started this morning as we talk about environmental resources and the impact on the well-being of Licking Countyans here in our own county. Our first question, and we'll start with Jennifer, and we'll work our way down the table. I'll ask that you just pass the microphone down as we proceed, is in what ways do you or the organizations you're representing work toward the preservation, planning, conservation, or management of environmental resources in Licking County?
Hello. All right. Based on Deb's introduction of me, you can tell in the 3 professional roles that I have, we don't focus on environmental issues. The reason I'm really sitting at this table, I believe, is because of the work that the Evans Foundation has done, serving as the neutral convener for Framework. That initiative started in April of 2022 where we convened 14 different jurisdictions and Licking County government to talk about land use and planning as we are facing growth within Licking County. So that hat I wear is very different than my colleagues here on the panel. Our goal was to establish a set of best practices and help provide educational resources to the elected leadership within the county to help address the extensive growth that we are already facing on the western part of Licking County and the growth that we anticipate in the future. Our goal was to try to help provide each individual community with the language, the tools, and the resources to help identify what is most important to them in their communities, how they can communicate that to developers that are coming into their area, and how they can shape the growth that is facing us. We all know there's extensive growth facing our county. We can't stop that. So as Licking Countyans, we want to be able to benefit where possible and to shape the growth in a way that allows our communities to be unique individual communities.
Right, so I'm with Licking County Recycling, and we help with the preservation, planning and conservation in one way with recycling. So you're gonna hear a lot about recycling today, I promise, but we do have a couple of ways in which we do that. So our main reason for being is that we provide recycling access to as many residents around the county as possible. We do that by offering currently 22 public recycling sites that are scattered around the county. And we also, and mostly those are in partnership with like a township or a village or city or whatnot that is willing to host those public bins on their property. We actually do have one at a church, and we've got one behind a Family Dollar though too. So we do work with a few businesses as well. We do also help townships or villages or whatnot, municipalities, sort of navigate their trash or recycling contracts that they may or may not have in their communities too. Another part of our job is to provide educational programming for residents, youth, businesses, industries, and political entities as well. So those would be things like school programs. How many of you have seen us at the Hartford Fair at the Natural Resources area? Deirdre's there too usually, so things like that. We're super excited to be part of the very first ever Hebron's Earth Day celebration coming up at the end of this month. So those are types of events that we go to throughout the year. We also help businesses and industries that are looking to do a better job of recycling, whether it is they just want to have recycling in their offices in their lunchroom, you know, the real simple stuff, or we've also talked about how to recycle literally tons and tons of plastic film, pallets, sludge, things like that. So that's not normally stuff that I talk about on a daily basis, but we have resources for it. So it's kind of interesting to kind of dig into some of that for some of these businesses and industries. We also hold events like Shredding Day, which we do with our county records and archives department. We are super excited to announce that this year we are adding an electronics collection with that too. So stay tuned, that's in September. And I finally went to my very first ever tire collection in Fairfield County last week. Oh, I cut out. Did I cut out?
Yeah. Did you flip it off?
I don't think so. Maybe I'm talking too long. Blinking. That is certainly a possibility. Anyway, I'm starting to do some research about doing some tire collections here in the county as well. So I know everybody's going to be real excited about that. Finally, we've got a very active, oh no, it did it again. I'm not touching anything, I promise. All right, I think I'm back on for a second. Anyway, we have social media. Please follow us, Licking County Recycling. And overall, our ultimate goal is to help our community stop putting so much stuff into a landfill. So that's, you know, that's the heart of why we do all those things that I just mentioned. So I don't know if you guys want to.
Corey go look for some batteries.
Okay. Yeah, it was working, so
Yeah.
yell at Scott. Yes, yes, we do. Thank you very much.
You want to pause or you want me to yell as well?
See if this can stretch a little bit, may or may not.
Yep, it'll be okay.
All right. So, I'm Scott Morris with the Licking County Health Department. So I guess for folks that may not know, I'll be talking a lot about water and wastewater today. I guess I'll ask the room, how many folks, know that the health department permits residential water wells and septic systems? Okay, all right, that's good. So, as far as just in correlation to the first question, as far as the conservation or management of those, the biggest thing for us is prior to 2015, rules were a little different for those systems. Nowadays in 2015 to current, the septic systems have to follow certain rules. And the biggest thing that really the state has harped on is on-site treatment of your wastewater. So on your property, treatment of your wastewater. Prior to 2015, those systems looked quite different. They could be all over the place. They could have an in-ground leach field. That could be a discharging system. I've seen all kinds of stuff, but 2015 to current, there are certain rules and regulations that need to be followed. And that's ultimately what we oversee. And as long as those expectations are being met, we will permit those systems. And in relation to water wells, same with those, there's certain regulations that need to be met as well. The siting of those well locations, it needs to be a certain amount of feet away from a residential septic system. It needs to be a certain amount of feet away from property lines, waterways, things like that. Make sure that those systems aren't going to be contaminated in any way. But the wells and the septic systems are all correlated. The biggest thing is you want on-site treatment of that wastewater. You want that soil to treat that wastewater and ultimately recharge your aquifer. So, again, our office kind of oversees that, ensures that those regulations are being met, and ultimately permit those systems. So.
I think it can go all the way over. Perfect. That's about as far as it's gonna go.
So I'm the conservation educator with Licking County Soil and Water. So a lot of my perspectives here are going to come from that education background. What I really do in my position is I help to teach the community members about how they can conserve their natural resources, how we can protect our environment, things like that. So I go into schools and I teach those types of things, as well as to community events like the Hartford Fair, as well as a few other community events throughout the county. I also put on a few adult workshops, but all that is really centered around teaching people how they can conserve their natural resources within the county.
I'm gonna go ahead and take that one back. I think Tori's got the other one. And Deirdre, we'll start with you on the next question here, so go ahead and
Keep that microphone. So our next question is, we tend to think of Licking County as being a blend of rural farmland and suburban areas. What is the breakdown of Licking County's environmental landscape in terms of land use? How might this change in the near and or distant future?
So this is definitely not my area of expertise. But I know that we definitely have some large areas that are agriculture and then some areas that are urban as well. And I know that that is definitely changing with the introduction of a lot of these industries.
So as far as Licking County's landscape, I think we're all somewhat familiar, but, the eastern side of the county is a lot more rural. And, I look at it a lot in respect to the soil. So septic systems are required to have a soil evaluation done. So I get to see soil evaluation from all around the county, from all different properties. So I get to see kind of the soil aspect and how that looks. But there's a vast difference in that from the eastern side of the county, as you go central, and then the western part of the county. So like Deirdre touched on, about, obviously you have a lot of agricultural landscapes, specifically mainly on the western side of the county. And as you go into the eastern part, more rural, we're seeing an explosion in population on western side, and we'll continue to see that. You know, the thinking is that's ultimately probably gonna make its way to the eastern side as well. You know, and we're looking at, again, more of the soil aspect, how that's ultimately going to change. So a lot of the areas on the western side of the county, with that agricultural and the flat landscape, you're dealing with, some limiting conditions in that soil. Obviously the perch season water table, you're dealing with, and then more on the eastern side, you're dealing with shallow bedrock. So ultimately, that's gonna shape how, you know, wastewater systems are installed. You know, is that gonna affect, water well quality as well? You know, as we are a growing community, you know, I think a lot of the concerns, and we get a lot of calls, you know, weekly, you know, how is my water quality gonna change? So, and we understand those concerns, and, you know, we're doing a lot of testing, for folks that requested. But I think that's, you know, folks' main concern is, you know, as the landscape changes and a growing population is, you know, how is my water quality gonna be affected? And, you know, we're analyzing that as the years go by, but, you know, we already have some areas that we're aware of in our county. I think most folks are aware that Hanover has you know, fairly decent arsenic problem. And then, you know, there's some occasional sample that will test positive for lead as well. So we're seeing how that, will ultimately, transcend in these next few years, so.
This one was a little tough for me too, because we don't really use land as a recycling department. But I kind of put a little twist on it, and unfortunately, what we see is that people are abusing our land. We see so much litter and so much dumping around the county, and that's what we get phone calls about. So, I mean, I guess that's kind of somewhat of a land use a little bit. We see this mostly, the litter and dumping in our rural areas. And unfortunately, at our more urban public recycling sites, Newark, unfortunately, we see a lot of illegal dumping going on at those. So unfortunately, people are abusing our land. And of course, we hate hearing about that. We also hear a lot about trash burning as well. Again, usually in more of our rural areas. In fact, I just spoke with a county employee yesterday, and she admitted to burning her trash. I have to admit, I'm not in favor of that. There are lots of environmental impacts on burning trash, and those do impact the land. I mean, just even this, the soil and the water that both of these two have been talking about. Trash burning does impact that as well as people. So I can't say that I'm a big fan of using our land for trash burning. Is any of this gonna change? I don't know, honestly. Some of our communities throughout the county do offer trash and even curbside recycling as part of their services in terms of the village or city or township or wherever they live. I do realize that these services cost people, and some of that is, you know, not necessarily easy in some of our more economically challenged areas, but we do have to be responsible for our trash and recycling. So I feel that trash contracts, recycling contracts are actually a good thing. I think one of the things that we as an agency can do to help this and using our land and making sure that our trash and recycling is disposed of is that I'm here to help with these communities or townships, again, whatnot, to help them understand what a trash or a recycling contract might be. So if any of you are here representing a municipality, certainly reach out to me and let me know if there's something I can do to help you understand your trash or recycling contract better.
All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about the framework study area. So for those of you who are not familiar, when we initiated this collaboration, we looked at 14 different jurisdictions, 7 townships, 3 villages, and 4 cities in Licking County government. So the study area that we looked at, we have maps over here that you're welcome to look at before you leave today. But the land mass of the study area reflects 264 square miles. That, in comparison to Licking County, which is a total of 687 square miles, is only about 38% of our land mass within the county. but it includes 65% of the population. So the statistics that I'm sharing today are reflective of that 264-mile study area. And the existing land use within that study area is 55% agriculture. We have 30% residential and 15% spanning industrial, commercial, and exempt land uses. Within Licking County as a whole, not just looking at the study area, we actually have 6 of our 25 townships that are unzoned. So as Licking County is facing growth within our county, we are in an environment where many of our communities haven't had zoning or kind of rules and regulations that address growth and development. So this is a big change within our county. During our project, we looked at zoning classifications across the study area in that 264 square miles. There were 73 different zoning classifications. Our planning consultant narrowed that down to 9. But what that means is that we have a very complex system throughout Licking County. And so from one jurisdiction to another, it's very difficult to kind of unravel and understand what those rules and regulations are, whether you're a landowner who's choosing to do something with your property or whether you're a developer. So that adds some complexity to our community. From a zoning perspective, so I had previously shared that 55% of our land mass is dedicated to agriculture within the study area. From a zoning perspective, 64% of the study area is zoned agricultural and rural development. So it is a big part of our community and the fabric of who we are within Licking County. Only 2.1% of that land is currently zoned for conservancy and open space uses. So as I share these facts about within the study area, keep in mind the communities to the east and to the north and to the south are less developed than this. So you will find a greater prevalence of agriculture within those communities.
You want to hold that for a minute, Jennifer, and we'll go back the other way. So based on the perspective of your work, how healthy would you say Licking County's environment is currently?
That's a difficult question for me to answer again, because I don't wear an environmental hat. I am a citizen and resident of Licking County, and through our work with Framework, I can talk about the fact that I believe Licking County is at risk as we are facing so much growth. It is important for us to carefully plan and be thoughtful about how we respond to this growth. So I think we're at a point in time in our county, we have extraordinary opportunity to shape our future. And if we choose to do that well, I think we can be well positioned. If we don't, again, I believe we're at risk. I'm going to share a little bit of data that we have learned through the Framework process. From the time of 2017 to 2013, 7,009 acres of agricultural land were lost within our county. And that is only looking at data for property that is in CAUV. So that is agricultural land that is receiving the CAUV tax exemption. So prior, we have had extraordinary kind of shifts in our county for a long time. We've had a focus since 2022 on growth that's been happening, but there has been a shift in losing the agricultural land. I think that through our Framework process, we engaged more than 4,000 residents throughout Licking County. Over and over, we heard how important the preservation of agricultural land and natural landscapes are to us and to our future generations. So I think our communities have to kind of uniformly be focused on ways that we can promote preserving the things that are most important to us as residents, whether that be agricultural preservation zoning, conservation development zoning and plating, conservation easements, land trust. And again, this is not my area of expertise, but these are tools that are available to each of the individual jurisdictions to kind of control and shape what's important to you. So if you live in a community with high agricultural or residential or rural open green space areas, be working with your community leadership, your elected leadership to try to find ways to preserve those spaces. We're at a point in time in Licking County where we have the opportunity to shape the growth that we're facing. We can either work to shape it in a way that honors and preserves things that are important to us, or we can be run over by it. And that's a choice each of us have. And I don't say that in a bleak way. I think it's an opportunity. Each of us can become engaged and informed and work with our elected officials to work on creating a balance that allows us to be proud of the communities that we live in, work in 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now.
We actually all just were talking about this question because we felt that this one was a little difficult to answer. How healthy is Licking County? In terms of recycling, I think we can do better, to be honest with you. There are some things that we do well, though, for sure. Nationally, the percentage of people or households that actually participate in recycling is only about 30%. Of course, that's different in certain communities. I mean, there are some states like Oregon and California that really encourage a lot more recycling than we do here in Ohio. There's some that do less too, but overall, only about 30% of people participate in recycling. And this is purely anecdotal, but when I drive around the county, particularly in areas where we have curbside recycling on trash and recycling day, the amount of the recycling containers that I see is very, very low. So I would say we are probably under this 30%. And that just is really upsetting to me, especially when I'm driving through the communities that actually provide curbside recycling as part of their trash service. There are just not enough people participating in it. So I do think we could do better. Another kind of statistic in regards to all of that is, unfortunately, one of our townships decided that they did not want any of our public recycling bins at their site anymore. So unfortunately, one of our township sites has gone away last week, but they did add curbside recycling to their trash service. Out of 700 residences in the township, only 50 have signed up for curbside recycling. It's only $6 a month. So that was a really disappointing number. We're hoping that that goes up over time. The township, as well as the contractor, are working on getting some more information out to residents, but that is just definitely, to me, another one that says we need to do better. But at least they have that opportunity. Where I live, which I don't live in Licking County, but where I live, I don't even have the opportunity for curbside recycling. So those people don't realize how lucky they are that they actually, even for only $6 a month, have that as an opportunity. And again, we also continue to see litter and dumping a lot too. So we've got to do better on that. However, the positives for sure. Last year alone, we collected over 5 million pounds of material in our public recycling bins. And that's fairly average for areas around here. Our colleagues down in Fairfield County collected a little bit more. So we need to work on this a little bit, but that's still a really good number. We're very excited about that. And what we're mostly excited about is how clean our recyclables are. When I first started in this program about 6 years ago, we were seeing contamination rates, meaning the wrong stuff in the public recycling bins, 25 to 40%. Anybody want to take a good guess at where we're at now? It's a lot lower. 5%. I like to think that's because of all of my education efforts, but I don't know that that's really truly the case, but I'll take a little bit of credit for it. But luckily, our contractor takes a lot of more items than they did even 6 years ago. So when I first started, we could not accept plastic tubs. Now we can, and that certainly decreases, our contamination. So despite the fact that I think we need to do more, I think the people that are participating in recycling are doing a very good job. So that makes me happy. And so it makes me glad to know that there are people who do healthy things for our county.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to focus a little bit on the wastewater side. To answer the question, how healthy would you say Licking County's environment is currently? I just kind of agree with the rest of the folks here, is maybe we certainly have some more work to do. And like I said, I'll focus more on the wastewater side, residential septic systems, because I feel a lot of that, and I follow up on a lot of those issues. And I'd say that's, definitely a major pollutant of our waterways is failing, septic systems. So just to give you a quick statistic, we do annual inspections on the actual commercial systems in our county. So, every year we roughly have a 10% failure rate that we observe. I wouldn't necessarily say not every one of them is contributing to polluting a waterway, but, there are larger systems that, could possibly pollute a waterway and a little more worse than a residence may. But yeah, every year we see roughly around a 10% failure. So we have around 250 systems that we inspect every year. So that's around 25 systems per year that we see that is failing. So not an ideal statistic, but I think the biggest thing for us, is getting out in the community more and trying to educate folks more. So we've made a lot of changes within the past few years to really get out in the community and meet with folks that do have a residence that has a septic system to ensure that they are properly educated on how to maintenance their system. I couldn't tell you how many times I've shown up to a residence and I have a septic system. I don't know where it's at. So not ideal. So we'd like to turn the page on that and make sure people understand that they, one, have a septic system, two, where it is and what it does, and three, how to properly maintenance that. I just think that's the biggest thing. And when we permit a new septic system, we inspect it when it gets installed. We come back a year after that to meet with the homeowner and ensure that, one, the system is working properly, and two, just go step by step and show them, this is the maintenance that you should be doing on your system. And I think that's been really good feedback, and I think a lot of the folks appreciate that. But if you're out there and you're one of those folks that maybe does have a septic system and you're thinking, maybe I have a few questions about it, feel free to contact us. We're happy to help in any way. We love coming out and meeting with you folks and making sure that you're properly educated on that stuff. So, but like I said, to answer the question, I'd say we certainly have some more work to do. So.
So based on the perspective of my work, I don't really have anything to add to that question. I think the other panelists did a really good job answering that.
Okay, thank you. Deirdre, I'm going to have you go ahead and keep the mic. We have a couple of specific questions for folks. So one for you, Deirdre. Could you help us understand what terms like conservation and preservation mean in environmental context, and what types of activities those include?
Yeah. So conservation and preservation in an environmental context, they're kind of two different philosophies on how to approach managing the environment. So conservation is going to be more, we're using our natural resources, but we're using them responsibly in a way that's going to save and protect them for future use. Preservation is going to be more like, we're trying to keep the land more pristine. We're not going to use our natural resources in that area. And then as far as activities that those might include, if we're thinking about conservation, this might be, if you see a construction site, they might have a silt fence put up. So this is something that they put up to catch the sediment runoff off of the property, and that's going to prevent that sediment from getting in our waterways, which is actually a pollutant in the water. So that's going to conserve the water. You also might see farmers will plant cover crops. These are crops that they put between harvested crops, and sometimes they can be harvested as well. And a lot of times when they plant these, they're also going to be crops that can add nutrients back into the soil. So this practice is going to add nutrients to the soil, so it's going to help conserve the soil in that way. It's also going to, those roots in the cover crops are going to hold the soil in place to prevent erosion from happening. So that is conserving both the soil and the water, because we're not having that sediment runoff. Another example might be if you have a riparian area next to a waterway. So this would be a strip of vegetation next to a stream or river, and this is going to be an area where sediment or nutrient runoff or pollutants can collect and not get into our waterway. So that will conserve the water. So in all those instances, we're still using our natural resources, but we're making sure that we save and protect them. When it comes to preservation, that's going to be more, if you think like a national park. It's still managed, they still do work to kind of keep it healthy, and people can still use that. area, but we're not going to be taking natural resources from that area. And then we do have some areas in Licking County that are preserves. But I try and think of like the national parks, because that's what a lot of people know very well.
Thank you. And Scott, here's a specific one for you. In your work with environmental health at the Licking County Health Department, you oversee programs relating to water, sewage, pools, mosquitoes, and much more. Are there any significant issues that you frequently encounter in these areas? How do we compare to other nearby counties in terms of sustainability, safety, and viability of these systems, especially water and sewer?
Yeah, and I think I touched a little bit on, the main sewer issues that we see. So, we estimate currently roughly around 30 to 40,000 systems in our county, which is quite a bit. And I think one of the headaches that I deal with the most is the older systems. And a lot of times it may predate our records that we even have a record of the system, which is, frustrating. The system's likely buried and the homeowner likely has no idea, where the system is or what it does. So a lot of the headaches that we deal with are certainly those older systems that predate our records. And, I've seen all kinds of different type of systems that you wouldn't believe. So they did things a little bit differently back in the day. But we're trying to, find those issues and handle them accordingly. And again, I just can't reiterate enough about how important education is on those items. And like I said, we're certainly trying to do better on that part. So you may see us out in the community more and trying to engage the community more on educating folks about, maintaining their septic system. So, and as far as water, significant issues, I think I touched on a little bit about, just water quality in certain areas. We do see some trends in the Hanover area with arsenic and the water there. There's a few lead samples that we see that turn positive as well. The majority of samples that we do are bacteria related, so E. coli, total coliform, really just to ensure that water is, safe for you to consume and you won't get sick. We do see a number of positive results throughout the year. It's not necessarily unusual. Obviously, if you have E. coli that tests positive in your water, that's not good. But total coliform is naturally occurring. It's not unusual to have in your water well. A lot of folks don't realize, your water wells actually require some routine maintenance as well. We regularly say, you want to, ideally probably have your water tested, every couple of years, if not every year. And then, it is recommended to chlorinate or disinfect your water well every 3 to 5 years, just to ensure that there isn't a bacteria buildup in your water well in any way. So most folks may not realize that, but again, another thing for us to go out and kind of educate a little bit more. But if you're concerned or you have a water well at your residence, then you're more than happy to talk with us and request a water sample. And it's not just, those parameters I listed. We do a number of different requests, iron, hardness, pH, lead, bacteria, arsenic, nitrates, things like that. Really anything that you kind of want to get tested, just talk to us and we can see what we can do. I know there's a lot of concern right now with PFAS, and I know that's a hot topic right now. We unfortunately don't have that capability, but it is a hot topic, and I know the Ohio Department of Health is working on addressing those concerns, and they actually did a recent study in our county in the Jacksontown area, and did some PFAS sampling in residential water wells. So I believe you can request that study and that information. I briefly saw it. There wasn't any major concerns, but there were, I want to say, like 2 to 3 water wells that did have a slight detection in that PFAS. But to my understanding, there may have been some activities that took place in the past. That's kind of why they chose that area to study that. So Beyond that, if you want me to talk about maybe mosquitoes, mosquito season is coming up. So last year was a very dry spring and early summer. This year, not so much. I'm sure you guys have seen that. So, yeah, I have a feeling this year is going to be pretty bad with mosquitoes. But another thing I'll mention is, and most folks may not realize, but we are a resource to use when it comes to mosquitoes. So depending on the jurisdiction you live in, but you know, we do have some larvicide that we can come out and apply. If you have some standing stagnant water that may have some mosquito larvicide or may have some mosquito larvae in it, we can apply that and work with you that way. We also do some mosquito trapping and analyze those mosquitoes if they are positive for West Nile virus. So last year we did have 3 different areas, 3 different positive pools that did test positive for West Nile virus. And when that happens, we pretty much directly that night go out and adulticide that area to ensure that that West Nile virus issue is taken care of. So we are a resource when it comes to mosquitoes, and I know that's not fun when you have those issues to deal with. So if you have any concerns or questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Scott? Andrea, what impact has Licking County recycling had on our county's environment? Is access to recycling available to everyone?
It is, yes.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to all of the details on that, but as I mentioned earlier, last year and in previous years, we've collected 5 million pounds of materials through our public recycling site. So that's pretty exciting, and we've had it higher in some other years. In fact, it seems to be going down a little bit. I think that may be because, again, hopefully people are putting the right stuff in there. And also, unfortunately, again, some of our public sites have closed over the last few years, which of course helps us save a little money. So that's a good thing. And fortunately, some of those are because they are adding curbside recycling instead of those sites. So, so about 5 million pounds of recycling materials annually. That's a good thing. Total, I got some information from our solid waste district about how much we are actually recycling outside of those public sites. Because that's just one small portion of what is actually recycled from the county. Of course, there is the curbside recycling, which is done by trash haulers like Rumpke or Local Waste or whatnot. My agency does not haul curbside recycling, so I don't ever collect those numbers. But when you add the public recycling sites, curbside, and commercial entities, so like businesses and things like that, they're not all required to give all of this information. So this is, it could potentially even be a completely irrelevant number because there could be a lot more because a lot of places don't actually report their information. But about 90 million pounds was collected and recycled in 2022. The majority, the vast majority of that came from businesses and commercial. So, so are we making an impact? I think so. I think those are really cool numbers. The other way that we're making an impact is that through our education and outreach programming. That would be me. We have a very small staff at our office. We have me, who is the director and educator. We have an office staff member who is full-time as well, and I'm very thankful for her behind-the-scenes work that she does for our office. And then we have one part-time employee who goes and collects recycling in our government building. So we do a lot with a very, very small number of people in our staff, but each year, the last couple of years, we've reached over 5,000 people through our programs, and that's about 100 programs per year. So I've been busy for sure. And of course, we always want to do more, but I can't be in 2 places at one time. So I think that number is pretty exciting though. In terms of access to recycling, for the most part, yes, everybody in the county does have access to recycling, and that comes in different forms. Of course, we've talked about the public recycling sites that we have all throughout the county. I will say, you know, we've talked a lot about, all 4 of us have mentioned how the western side of the county is a little different nowadays than the eastern side of the county. And our public recycling sites are definitely in the central and east areas. Our curbside recycling that we see that's you know, monitored and done with each of the different communities is more prevalent in the western side of the county. So Jersey Township, Pataskala, Johnstown, Granville, both the village and the township, Union Township, Etna Township, Harrison Township, and even the village of Hebron all have opportunities for curbside recycling. We don't see that at all on the eastern side of the county. So there's different ways that people can access recycling for sure. We are, let me rephrase that. We report to the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency, and they have a formula that we have to use as a county and as a solid waste district, which includes Catoctin, Fairfield, and Perry counties as well. And we have to provide access to recycling for 80% of the population. Now, that doesn't just necessarily mean the total population of the county divided by how many people recycle or anything like that. They have some pretty in-depth formulas that have to do with the types of recycling that are offered, like curbside or public recycling sites, and how many people live in certain areas. I could go into a lot of detail about that, so if any of you really want to know all those statistics, we can talk later. It's not super exciting, but either way, right now, we're at about 83 or 84%. So we are meeting the EPA's minimum standards, and in fact, we are above those minimum standards for everybody having access to recycling. One final statistic too is that most residents in the county live within about 5 miles of one of our public recycling sites. We do have some gaps, particularly like right up by the Knox County line, right over that by the Muskingum County line, and now also in our western part of the county, because we're going to see more of that curbside trend than the public sites, but they do have curbside access. So, but in terms of the actual public sites that we have, most of our residents do live within 5 miles of one of those. So yes, I think we are making an impact, and I think everybody has access.
Thank you. Jennifer, the next one's for you. Framework's final report showcased an abundance of information about Western and Central Licking County's current natural landscape, as well as considerations about future growth and development. What are some of the recommendations or strategies that are presented by the study, and have you seen significant buy-in by local constituents?
Sure. So Framework has been a fantastic process engaging, more than 4,000 people throughout our community. And I have here today an example of our printed report that was the result of 15-month project. I also have boards up here along the wall, and they share some information similar to what I'm going to share with you today. So if you want to read more, we have those available. As a part of the framework process, we had 3 rounds of public engagement, and we kind of boiled down all of the input and insight offered by residents in our county into 14 different principles. And those principles then became kind of the foundation for the work that we do and have been doing. The full list of those is up on board number 1 over there, but I picked out 3 principles that kind of are very specifically related to environmental issues. Not in a particular order, but people would like to preserve the natural landscape and real character and preserve the natural environment. That was a very high priority. The community believed that growth should be focused inward, and we should prioritize development adjacent to existing communities. So rather than just sprawling throughout all of our nearly 700 square miles, try to be deliberate about where that development occurs. So it's adjacent to existing development, existing infrastructure, waters, roads, etc. And this is a little bit different for Licking County, given our kind of history of development, but there was a strong interest in mixed use development, where you would have individuals kind of living, having small retail shops, opportunities for people to work kind of in the same area. So making the communities a little bit more walkable and reducing the number of people that are kind of out on the road at any given time. The comments that we received, and I received every single one of them because I received the email from the feedback that we had, but over and over, people wanted to preserve the rural atmosphere, rural space while still close to what you need, rural style living, preserving agriculture and farmland, agriculture and green space. So it's clear that was a really important part of what we all value about our community. And when we asked the community to identify model areas that they wanted to replicate, so we asked people to go through an exercise of kind of putting red dots and green dots on a map of our community. And the green dots were oftentimes places that represented green space, public space, parks, recreation. So that's very clear that is important to our community. Throughout the process, we identified approximately 76 best practices, and those are compiled at the end of this report. You can access this report at www.framework.lickingcounty.org. But in the back of the book, we actually have a matrix. Sorry, I'm just following the mic. And there's a list of best practices for thoughtful planning and development and land use. And we have it broken out based on city, county, village, and township. One of the things people don't really probably understand is how complicated it is to kind of be elected officials in the state of Ohio. The rules and regulations that apply to each layer of government are very different. So the means in which a particular jurisdiction gets revenue and the tools and the things they can actually do in their community are different depending on which layer of the government you are. So in many ways, our community elected officials' hands are tied. But out of those 76 best practices that we identified, we think approximately 30 of them are related or can be related to environmental issues. Reaching back to what I began with, we were really focused on land use. And so the intersection of land use and environmental issues is where framework can play a role in this. Where appropriate, cities, villages, and townships should consider increasing their residential densities in exchange for conserving farmland and natural environment. Jamie Green, our planning consultant, always jokes about the two things that communities are violently opposed to. Number one, sprawl, and number two, density. And the reality is you have to pick one or the other, right? So I think as our communities are starting to face growth in coming from the western part of Licking County, we have to think about what is most important to us, and then we have to be willing to make some sacrifices or changes in how we think about our communities in order to preserve those things that are most important. You know, at a county level, we can look at floodplain regulations and start to like strengthen and create more conservation easements along floodplains. We can create tools promoting alternatives and a reduction in personal automobile use. We can promote sustainability practices among local communities and businesses, like you heard today. Promote strategies, programs, and funding to protect valuable land resources within our communities. If there's land in your community that is important from a natural resource perspective or for community recreation, find ways and figure out how you can preserve that. The Granville Township and Granville Village have done a great job with their open space levy, and they work to acquire land that they want to preserve. The Licking Land Trust is another tool that can be used. So there are entities out there you can partner with. And we, through Framework, have made a recommendation that a multi-jurisdictional sustainability advisory committee be formed to kind of enhance and strengthen cross-jurisdictional discussions about the preservation of our natural resources. You ask about what the buy-in is in terms of Framework. I believe elected officials have learned a great deal through this process. Each community is embracing different aspects of Framework, which is what we intended. It was never our goal to kind of tell a community what they should or should not be doing, but to bring best practices and education and resources to help them make more informed decisions, to lead and to do what their constituents want. Framework alone does not solve any of our problems. It is only useful to our communities if we implement and execute on the best practices that make sense for our communities. And we would challenge each of you to read through the Framework document and find data, tools, and suggestions that are relevant to the work you are doing and the topics that you are passionate about. Have conversations with decision makers and stakeholders that can help you achieve actionable goals. Be engaged with your city council, your township meetings, read your elected official minutes and engage with your elected officials. Tell them what is important to you. I'd say some of our communities have embraced it more than others. We have some wins. There's a township that traditionally has 5-acre lots per single residential household. They're looking at doing more mixed use and some kind of spot commercial and manufacturing. as a way to ensure that they have the financial resources to support the community they want. But I think when you realize how quickly our land use can be consumed, or our agricultural land can be consumed with 5-acre lots, it starts to make you think about things in a different way. We did some analysis, and based on the Business and Industry Association projection for how many residential units would come to Licking County over the next 10 years, that would consume about 35% of our developable land. So if you extrapolate that over a 3-year or a 30-year period, that would be a full build out. But we have choices, and that's where I feel like there is some optimism here. If we get organized and communicate what is important to each of our elected officials, there's an opportunity to shape this growth as we go forward.
Wow, that's a lot, Jen. Okay, question for all of you on this one. In recent months, several concerns have been raised about the future of our county's natural resources and the impact that development might have on our communities. Some of these discussions have centered on asphalt plants, aquifer use and capacity, plastics recycling, sewer systems, and growth. As we continue to develop our county, what concerns do you have and what are you hopeful for? You start, you were just going down, yeah.
Okay. I would say that I'm hopeful that our work with Framework and the public outreach that we have done has really resulted in elected officials, municipal leaders, and our community thinking about things in a different way. Licking County hasn't had to think about the issues we're thinking about now. So people can get frustrated and throw, stones at people who they think are doing the right thing or doing the wrong thing. But the reality is we're faced with new challenges, both infrastructure and land use in ways we haven't been before. So we really have to work together in new ways to find the best solutions for our community, and we all need to be problem solvers. So from my perspective with Framework, I would just kind of reiterate the best practices that are outlined in the report. Those are really tools that are best practices across the nation. We've looked at communities and case studies where they've had exponential growth, what things have happened, they've done well, what things they have not done well. We need to learn from communities that this growth has already happened. So the tools are out there for us to make better and more informed choices. We just all have to be active participants in the process. And I'm going to share a quote. I'm not sure this is for this question, but I think it's really important. I don't want to lose the opportunity. So this is not political in nature, but I want to share a quote from Ruth Bader Ginsburg. At the age of 82, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was asked what advice she would give to young women. This quote to me is pretty transformational. Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. And that's really important. I think our community has to understand this. We can't get so fiery and angry about issues. It causes people to put up walls. So start finding people to collaborate with, be partners with, and build relationships. That's the only way we're going to make change. Yep.
And before I go on, I wanted you to list that website again that the framework was listed on.
It's www.frameworklc.org. And there, we do have some business cards on the table that have the website if you need them.
Frameworklc.org, did you say? I gotta write that down too, so hang on. Okay, so thank you, Jennifer. So the question about all of these developments and things happening in our county, you mentioned the plastics recycling facility, so of course I can speak to that one. I want to start with Intel though, just a little bit. I feel like I say that word every single day. Does everybody else feel that way too? So I was actually pretty excited. I thought, wow, there's got to be so much recycling opportunities with Intel coming in here, and I could not wait. I work directly for the county commissioners, so I was like, I've got an in, I could go talk right to Intel. Well, it turns out that because Intel is actually in New Albany's property, they're part of SWACO, which is the Solid Waste Authority of Central Ohio, basically Franklin County's solid waste district and recycling program. So I have no stake in their game whatsoever. So unfortunately, I've actually had a few people in the last couple of years ask me like, well, certainly you've talked to Intel. I actually can't talk to them. It's all Franklin County and Swaco. So, as much as I would love to answer your questions about Intel and any waste and recycling, it all goes through Swaco and not me. So unfortunately, I don't have any info on that. The recycling plant, though, how many of you have heard about the 3-point ecosystems going into Hebron? It's been in the news a lot lately because those giant super loads that have been driving from southern Ohio up to our area, the first 3 or 4 of them have actually gone to 3-point. They are giant incinerators or kilns because the plastic recycling company, 3-point, they, gosh, it's a really hard thing to describe what they're doing, but it's basically called chemical recycling. It is totally different than the recycling that I send my recyclable material to at Rumpke, which is called mechanical recycling. Chemical recycling uses a lot of heat, a lot of energy, and some chemicals to actually turn materials into a liquid or a gas. And then those are turned into new things. They may become new plastics, they may actually stay in a liquid form. So I'm not going to get into all of the chemistry and everything behind it because I'm certainly not an expert on it. But one reason why I'm excited about it is because 3-point and other plastics recycling companies, which there's less than 10 of them in the whole entire United States right now, they are finding ways to recycle plastics in particular that are very, very hard to recycle. So they're dealing with things that are like giant rolls of plastic film. They might even be dealing with, I'm sure Deirdre is very familiar with all of these 55-gallon drums, you know, that people use for like the rain barrels and things like that. They're looking at ways to recycle things like that that are very difficult to recycle because of the makeup of them, because of the size of them or whatnot. So there's a really good opportunity there for chemical recycling to find a home, find a reuse for these items that mechanical recycling cannot. I've been reading up a lot about 3-point and just chemical recycling in general, and there are some questions about it. And I think Jennifer kind of touched upon this, is that there's a lot of new stuff out there. This is stuff we haven't dealt with before. You know, she's dealing in terms of land use. This chemical recycling is stuff we haven't really dealt with before. Like I said, there's probably only less than 10 chemical recycling plants in the entire United States right now. So there are a ton of questions about it. A lot of reading that I've done about it, it really questions, is this good for the environment? There is a lot of output when you're dealing with that amount of heat, with that amount of chemicals and things that they're using. Is that good for the environment or not? Nobody's really sure yet. And so there's a lot of research that needs to be done on chemical recycling in terms of finding out how good or bad it is for the environment. I don't have those answers right now. Like I said, I don't work for a chemical recycling department or anything. So, but those are just kind of some things to consider when you are dealing with this new technology. So we will see, we will find out, and maybe get some answers as time goes by. So that's my answer. Should I move it on to Scott here?
And I'll just reiterate a little bit as well about the Intel thing, is our office doesn't really have much involvement at all. It's more or less Franklin County and partners at the state level, Ohio EPA, Ohio Department of Health. So, but just in regards to, I know there's been some concerns and talks with the asphalt plant. Again, I have to defer that to our partners at the state level, Ohio EPA, Division of Air Pollution Control, who you probably want to reach out to. Aquifer use and capacity, I do get a lot of phone calls about, you know, concerns of, you know, the aquifers around the county, and is my aquifer going to run out? And again, that's not really my expertise. I can, you know, kind of tell you a little bit about the water quality itself, but as far as the aquifer capacity, again, I have to defer that question to the partners at the state level, Ohio Department of Natural Resources, Ohio EPA. And I know there was a proposal, I want to say last month, in regards to I don't know, don't quote me, I don't know the exact proposal from the Ohio EPA as regards to smaller residential, like package plants was the proposal. And I know our health commissioner, Chad Brown, and I believe the county commissioners as well, locked on that and sent a letter of everybody was unsupportive of it, and luckily the Ohio EPA, pulled that, proposal, very quickly. I think there was a little pushback there, so, it just goes to show you, you know, voice your opinion, make it heard, we do hear it, and, in that case, it worked, so I'm not sure, what may happen beyond that, but, you know, things are constantly changing very quickly, so, but those are the few instances that I think were involved in the question that I had the answers for, so.
So my answer to this is a little bit more general, but obviously there's concerns, I'm sure all of you are concerned just about, this development and just making sure that the environmental concerns are considered. And I'm really just hopeful that, as our other panelists have, talked about, that, the public's voices are heard, and those entities that really have an understanding of the environmental impacts are able to, voice those concerns, and that they are heard as well and taken into consideration.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna have the staff walk around. If you have questions, I want you to hold those up and we'll come around and we'll start in some questions from our audience today.
I know. You guys are making us nervous here.
You guys are interested?
This last question too, I saw lots of like, oh, or like interested looks. I'm like, uh-oh, here we go. Thank you.
Just a lot of moving parts and some really hard to keep up on. Even I.
It's so much more than us, you know. I just want to mention that it's not very about.
Okay, I'm gonna dive in here. I'm still collecting Psalm
Okay.
1. Jennifer Roberts, please clarify, 7,000 acres average land loss from 2017, 23, or was it 2017 to 20?
2017 to 2023, the 7,009 acres were brought off the CAUV rules. So that means they were no longer being officially farmed within the county. And I share that statistic because it reaches back to 2017. I think it's really important to understand that Licking County was experiencing extraordinary growth. It has been for the past 10 to 15 years. And I think there just wasn't a focus on that, and people didn't realize what was already happening in our county.
It's just the study area as well.
Yeah, sorry, within our study area, the 14 jurisdiction.
Can you repeat CAUV, please? I know I've heard that, but.
I am not an expert on CDD,
Yeah,
but
okay.
essentially it's a tax tool that farmers can use if they're actively farming land. It puts them in a different tax bracket than you would with regular property taxes. So I can't give you the exact of that, but it is a good measure because if someone's taking it off the CAUV rules, there's usually a penalty for that process. So that's usually only happening if the property is being sold for another purpose. You wouldn't just pull your property off the CAUV tax rate.
The U.S. Department, or the U.S. Department of Agriculture 2022 census was just released, and that would have data to looking at the county, but looking at, I feel like, acres in production versus CAUV.
Thank you. Next question. If we don't have curbside recycling, where can we find a list of recycling spots?
lickingcounty.gov/RLC. There's an interactive map on there, and then underneath the map, there is a list of all of our current 22 sites with their address. And it might, if I remember correctly, it actually has the days of the week that those are generally picked up as well, too. I also brought flyers. So if anybody wants some of that information, I have flyers. And I brought jar openers that are made from recycled tires in case anybody wants those too. So I will have those available for you at the end.
Hold the microphone. Another question. Where can we dispose of large items like the ones we see on the side of the road, like mattresses, couches, tires, etc.?
LakeandCounty.gov/RLC. We do have a frequently asked questions section in there, and it addresses all that good stuff, the appliances, the bulk materials. A lot of times though, the simplest thing to do is ask your trash hauler. I am blown away how many of those things I see dumped at our public recycling sites. That meant somebody had to put that in their truck, take it miles down the road, less than 5 miles, everybody, remember? And then dump it there at that site. They could have just dragged it to their curb and probably had their trash hauler pick it up for them. There are also other trash services like 1-800-GOT-JUNK, or there's scrappers. You know, I see on Facebook all the time, you know, I've got a washer and dryer, who wants it? And somebody within hours says, oh, we'll come and get it, you know, whether because they're gonna use it or fix it, or because they're a scrapper and they want the money from it, I don't know, but I think there's way easier ways to dispose of big stuff like that than most people recognize. But if you're looking for very specific places, our website does have that in our frequently asked questions.
I know sometimes that those large items end up in our rivers. I know we have once a year our wonderful river roundup. Deirdre, can you tell us what are the dates for the river roundup, and what kinds of things do you all pick up during that time?
Yeah, so the River Roundup is a community volunteer event where people throughout Licking County can sign up to help take trash out of our rivers. And we go and walk along the rivers. There's a few sections where you can get in, and a couple of sections where you can take trash with canoes. It is the first Saturday in September, I believe. Let me super quickly, I should have this off the top of my head, but I usually do, but right now I'm having trouble.
Is it the 8th maybe?
I think it is the 7th.
7th.
Yeah, it should be the 7th of September is this year's River Roundup.
So thank you for that as well. And I know each year you all pick up tons and tons and tons
Yes,
of
yeah,
trash. So
yes.
thank you. Next one is about capacity. Can Licking County support the increased need for water? If not, how can it be addressed?
I think that was probably to go to me, and I think I maybe touched on it a little bit there at the very end. It's just not my expertise as far as what our aquifer capacity is going to be in the next, 5 to 10, 20 years. Again, I probably have to defer that to our state partners at the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, and Ohio EPA.
Scott, hold the mic. Here's another one for you. Scott, you mentioned PFAS. What is that?
Yeah, let me make sure I pronounce this right. Perfluoroalkyl substances, I hope I'm not botching that, but it is essentially, it is a substance that has been found in like non-stick materials. So your cookware, at least your old cookware, that is non-stick, typically would have some PFAS, fire suppression. The foam used to have a PFAS in it. Trying to think of some other materials, like your waterproof clothing will tend to have PFAS, and there's really been, again, it's a very hot topic, so there's more and more things that you're finding out about this PFAS, but the concern is that it's what's called a forever chemical. It doesn't break down in the environment, and the concern is ultimately it gets into surface water and groundwater. And again, it just doesn't break down. So I know there's been a heavy talk, at the government level about the concern with PFAS and how do we eliminate, the issue. And obviously with it being a forever chemical, there's some concerns of the health issues that it may have. And I don't know all the health issues off the top of my head, but I know it can lead to, cancer and things like that. So it's a pretty big concern right now and a very hot topic, so.
Hold the mic there again, Scott. What steps, actions, resources are available on a community level that can be done to reduce waste? Are there other ways we can do away with our waste rather than the septic systems and things?
Question.
Or is that more of a question for me? I don't
Is
know
it,
what
is it
you
more
thought you were
waste, is
asking.
it more solid waste, or is it more
It says
waste,
waste.
sewage waste?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just being, cognizant, I guess, of your water use, especially if you're on a residential septic system. So, septic systems are sized to a certain capacity based off of the size of the home. So, if you go beyond that capacity of water use, you're setting your system up for failure. So, I tell folks all the time, just be, cognizant of your water use. And I know a lot of folks probably love to take a long hot shower, but, if you're on a residential septic system, you may want to reconsider that, and reduce that time a little bit. But, as far as just reducing your waste, there are, some other avenues you can go instead of a septic system. There are compost, toilets that are approved to use, and there's things like using a gray water recycling system, or an incinerator toilet. Some items I'm not a professional on or have the expertise by any means, but there are other options to use maybe on your property rather than a septic system, so.
Okay, next one's for you, Andrea. It said that 90% of our recycled material ends up in landfills regardless. Is this true?
It depends on where you're talking about, and it depends on when too. Back when I started in this position back in 2018, that was when China stopped accepting recyclables from the United States. Did anybody hear about that back then? It's called the National Sword. I'm not sure what that all means, but either way, luckily here in Licking County and in Ohio in general, we were not affected by that too much, because most of our material recovery facilities, we call those MRF, kind of fun to say too. Most of our MRFs here in Ohio have domestic buyers of all of our materials. So they weren't sending a lot of stuff to China to begin with anyway. On the other hand, places like on the West Coast, Washington, Oregon, California, even a little bit further in, a lot of their buyers were in China. So they were having a really hard time getting rid of their stuff, their recyclable materials, when China stopped taking them. So they had to actually find new places to take their recyclable materials to. Back then, yes, I would say that only 10% in certain areas was actually getting recycled. Here in the Midwest, though, we have a much more robust domestic buying and recycling program, so we weren't hit with that too hard back then. I don't think that those are very accurate statistics, though, unless that's like a worldwide statistic, which then it very well could be very accurate. But here in Licking County, our recycling rates, as I mentioned kind of earlier, are not super high. We're only seeing maybe 30% of people who are participating in recycling. I get this question a lot, though: is all of our stuff actually being recycled? The stuff that you put in our public recycling bins is taken to Rumpke, who is one of our trash haulers and recyclers here in Central Ohio. They have one of the largest MRFs in the United States right now. And well, it's not actually open just yet. We're going to be touring it here in a couple of weeks. But it is one of the largest ones, and it has some of the most advanced technology I have ever heard of or ever seen in my life. There is, and I've been there already, but there is so much metal and so many conveyor belts in this giant warehouse. It's astounding. And I am so excited to see how they're going to be able to recycle much more than 10%. So they've got the capabilities to separate all the different types of plastics, all the different types of trash even that's in there. It's so much, it's astounding. So, so I'm not really sure where that number comes from, that 90 versus 10%. I think that we are recycling everything we absolutely collect, unless it's stuff that we don't accept for whatever reason. So, so I think it really depends on where you're talking about, what time, what year it was and everything. So I know that doesn't really necessarily answer that question, but I'm not sure about those numbers.
Next one for anybody here. There's a lot of fear, misunderstanding around solar farms. What steps can we be taking as a community to move or transition to more renewable and sustainable energy?
Since I have the mic, I'll kind of address the afterlife of those items. Because just like I was saying with the chemical recycling plant, this is still somewhat new. And we're not really sure what to do with all of these things when they're done with their life. From what I understand, the solar panels are only good for what, like 30, 40 years or something? Does that sound familiar to anybody? And so now we're kind of wondering, like, what are we gonna do with these things when they're done? So there's a lot of research being done right now in terms of the recyclability of, or reuse of those items. And I think that that is something that we're gonna have to address, because those things are going to come to the end of their life sooner than we realize. Same with the wind turbines. What are you gonna do with these? I don't even know how big those things are, 100 feet, 200 feet, whatever they are. I'm underestimating, I think. What are you gonna do with those things? Are we gonna put them just in a landfill? Are we going to recycle them? So I think this is, as Jennifer has said so many times, this is an opportunity for people in the waste management field to figure out what the heck to do with these things after they're done. So started kind of on the back end of this. Anybody else want to address this question?
Yeah, I don't know if I have the expertise to answer that.
All right, well, let's move on to another one. Let's see, there are industries that have toxic industries, problematic history with other states. Can we ensure that Licking County citizens are protected from harmful emissions of our soil and water and air? Who's responsible for monitoring these emissions?
Yeah, if you're talking about the larger developments, again, mainly on the western side, those are mainly handled by our state partners. So Ohio EPA, Ohio Department of Health, would be the folks you'd want to reach out to. And I think that question may be related more to air pollution. So again, Ohio EPA does have a division of air pollution control you can reach out to and address your concerns.
So to get back on that, another further question specifically, I think for the health department is, since these things are happening in our county, I'm trying to summarize this, and the health department is responsible for helping to protect the health of Licking County residents. Will the health department be looking at expanding beyond looking at water and sewer permits?
That's a good question. As of now, we're required to enforce, the Ohio Administrative Code, for water wells and septic systems. So we permit and oversee those, systems up to a certain capacity. If there's a septic system that produces over 1,000 gallons per day, again, that goes to the Ohio EPA. If there's a residential water system that serves over a certain capacity of people, I would say it's 25 people per 60 days out of the year. Again, it goes to the Ohio EPA to oversee and permit. So depends on the sizing of it. But if it's over that capacity, it generally gets handled through our state partner, the Ohio EPA.
All right, well, I want to thank you. We're not going to say thank you and wrap up just quite yet. But we do want to thank all of you for providing some further questions for our panelists this morning. There are so many ways that we could have taken this forum this morning, and we could probably spend a whole day on various aspects as it relates to our environment. I think someone said once, the earth can do very well without humanity.
Right.
But humanity cannot do very well without the earth. We cannot have a healthy community in all aspects, physically, mentally, socially, economically, without preserving and taking care of our earth. However, whose responsibility is it? It's not just our industry's responsibility. It's not just our organizations that are charged with this responsibility, but each of us has an obligation, a duty, a human call, if you will, to help conserve, protect, advocate for our natural resources in some capacity. We moved to Licking County because it's a beautiful county. Hopefully some of you got out and you saw the solar eclipse. How many of you saw the solar eclipse?
Looks so cool.
Yeah, yeah. I had tears in my eyes. I got to see the full, totality. We cannot not be in awe if we stop to pause to think about nature, our earth, our soil, our water, our green spaces, our blue sky, our sun. I mean, we could just go on and on and on. And there's never been a time in history, in Earth's history, that humans have had a greater impact. I think someone is now calling it the Anthropocene age that we are in, meaning that the greatest impact on the geological and environmental forces in our world right now are caused by humans. So what I'd like for you to do just for a few minutes is just take a moment in your own mind. I don't have to do this. Take a moment in your own mind. In what ways are you personally thankful for our environment? You can close your eyes, just take a moment. What way are you personally thankful for the environment? Let's start with some gratitude. Okay, and I want you to just kind of right now, maybe share one thing that you're thankful for the environment with people at your table. And then I want you to share maybe in one way that you can help take care of our environment. One way. And that looks different for all of you. Some of you use your voice, some of you do a better job of recycling, some of you are going to use less water to water your lawn, whatever it is. What's one thing you're thankful for, and what's one way that you're going to help protect our environment?
That's an interesting answer. I just saw
That's what I heard. We don't have to. We try to leave there. Well, I question that. I thought you were right.
See the solar eclipse in the totality, or did you just stay here? I stayed and worked. I left early, never.
I have literally been living in seeing this since the partial eclipse that I saw in 2017. So I went to Sunday, which is not far from the outlet mall up there. So I was like, you know what, there's parties and there's well, actually 71 minutes with 37 through like New Albany to get home. So we knew there was back road and an easy way out. All these suckers were sitting there in the left lane trying to turn left to get on 71 and like, nah, it's a turn right. I'm like, why are you out? But no traffic, no cars at all. It was stunning. It was absolutely stunning. It delivered, you know, big time. So
Yeah, luckily the clouds had
oh my God, I couldn't believe it because it was like today or yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Monday was
Yeah.
the only day this week.
It was a beautiful day and it was a beautiful site. In 2017, where I saw it, I was only partial. And it was really kind of a letdown. It was like, oh, okay, well, we saw a chunk taken out of the sun, but it like didn't get us to do anything. So to experience all of that.
Okay, just about another minute, we'll wrap it up here, just one more minute. I want to thank this morning our Community Partner Council Forum Committee. If you're on the committee, could you just please raise your hands? You're part of our Community Partner Council Forum. Thank you. We have a committee that meets every week on Monday. Maybe you've written down some suggestions on your forms on your table, but if you have suggestions, feel free to reach out to our office. If you'd like to know more about the committee or learn how you can get involved in being a part of these forums, let one of us know. We have additional forums coming up. Next month, we're going to be talking about more than food from the grocery store. The cost of everything is going up, and oftentimes there are things that have to be left off of your weekly shopping list. So we're going to talk about hygiene items and some ways that we're going to be diving into the cost of hygiene in Licking County and how that impacts families in our community. And then in June, we're going to be talking about elder abuse and neglect, a very timely topic as well. So please come and join us for our future community partner forums. There are so many topics that affect us each day. One of the goals and aims of our forums is to get people out of their silos. You know, the environment affects this area over here, this area over here affects this area over there. And it's really important that we all take time to learn about something in a different area that maybe we don't have a lot of knowledge on. Many of us don't have knowledge on many ways that we can be involved in environmental concerns or issues. But take the time to learn something. You know, every day is a new opportunity. I used to have an adopted grandfather a long time ago. He used to say it's a bad day if we don't learn something. So learn something, and hopefully you have learned some things today, and there's many more things to learn about this topic. We've got a few announcements, but before we go on to some United Way announcements, I really want you to help me give a really big thank you to our panelists who took time to be here and answer some difficult. They will stick around, and if you'd like to talk with them, they'll be available. And I think there's some handouts, there's some poster boards over there about frameworks, so take some time to look at these things. We still have a little food left. We do have a few United Way announcements too, so I'm going to invite Corey to come up. And again, thank you all so much for attending today. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Deb, and thank you to all of you for coming this morning. It is a highlight of my work here at United Way to be able to take part in these community partner councils. So I appreciate each and every one of you that continues to show up every month. I just want to take a minute to talk about something that we are extremely excited about at United Way, and that is a new programmatic effort that we have been engaged in. Something that we're able to offer Licking County, which is extremely timely and super exciting. Thanks to the generosity of Microsoft, we're happy to announce that we are rolling out a new program called Generator Skills, which is geared toward rapid career upskilling and job placement for people here in Licking County. Generator is a nationwide program that provides job coaching, career upskilling, career services, folks who are looking for a job, helping them, coaching them through building a resume, interviewing skills, being a good employee, as well as actual applicable skills to the workforce. So we are currently accepting applications to enroll in our first cohort of this program. I have a couple of materials over there on the table, which you're welcome to take. This first cohort will be focusing on project management. So the folks who take part in this program will graduate with a certificate in project management that's recognized by LinkedIn. It is credentialed, it's not like a full project management professional certification, but it does put them on their way toward being able to complete that. So there is a program overview, this stapled packet, if you'd like some more information specifically about that project management program. We also have some flyers that you're welcome to take. So as I said, we are accepting applications right now. Due to the cost of the program, which we are covering the cost 100% for those who are enrolled, we are only able to enroll a limited number of people. We have about 20 spots, so we want to make sure that we're prioritizing the folks who are going to be a good fit and could really benefit from this program. So I'm sure by now you're all aware of our ALICE demographic, and that's the metric that we use to determine someone's financial health. So just a refresher, ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. So these are the folks who are working, sometimes multiple jobs, and are still battling the rising cost of existing right now. And so I would love to see people take part in this program and no longer need to work multiple jobs. On average, throughout the country, Generator has a median salary for folks who graduated of over $63,000 a year. So not only are they teaching them very desirable skills that are applicable to the job market, they are then pairing them with employers that have openings to actually do job placement. So they have about a 65% placement rate of the graduates of their program. So we've been working not only with their national partners that often provide remote work opportunities, but we've been developing relationships with local employers as well to build some possibility to have actually in-person local employment for people that would prefer that as well. So we do have these flyers. There's a QR code that can be scanned that takes you to the link to apply. We also have it on our website. So if you go to unitedwayllc.org, you can click on what we do, and then on the drop-down, select Generator. I do want to point out Generator is spelled G-E-N-E-R, the number 8, T-O-R. This flyer also, one side is in English and one side is in Spanish. So we're trying to overcome language barriers. They do have translation services and career coaches who are multilingual. So if English is not someone's language, that's not an issue. We've also been working to remove as many barriers as possible. So there is no prerequisite work experience, education experience. If someone has been involved with the justice system in the past, that's not an issue. I will say, currently it is an online program, so access to the internet is something that is needed. If that's a barrier for someone, I would still encourage them to apply, and we can work with some of our local partners to try to bridge that gap in the meantime. Jamie?
What is the age, like, what is there a requirement, like age requirement with the program, or?
No, 18 and up. So you can be, like, if someone is in high school, if someone is just out of high school, there really is no age requirement. So it's open to anyone in Licking County. As I said, they will graduate currently with a certificate in project management, which is widely applicable through a variety of industries and different employers. So we're super excited. The cohort is going to be starting soon. We're taking applications through this month. Classes will begin on May 6th, and it'll take about 6 weeks. The program ends on June 27th, and then they'll be ready for the job market. So the beauty is that Generator provides career coaches with a very low caseload. So each career coach only has about 15 individuals in their caseload, so they can provide a lot of attention. So they're going to be coaching them through the program, making sure that they complete their coursework, but also providing them with those career placement skills. Additionally, the career placement continues after they finish the program. So if someone, is placed at a career and then they realize it's not a good fit, they can go back and their career coach can work together to get another job. So it really is a wonderful opportunity for people. And again, this is all made possible through the generosity of Microsoft. They purchased land in our community and jumped in with both feet and have been investing here locally. So we certainly appreciate that. So I would encourage you all to pick up some of these, post them. If you work with people who are either actively seeking employment or are just looking, for a change in career or can really benefit, if some of your clients maybe are working multiple jobs or are having a difficult time with the rising cost of expenses here in Licking County, this could be a really great thing for them. So I just want to highlight that. I also do want to mention, if you haven't already heard, our next grant cycle is quickly approaching. Applications for our 2025 funding for our community impact grant will be available on April 29th. Those applications will be due on June 7th. So definitely be on the lookout for that.